TalkTV, Sam Armstrong. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Kev.
First of all, Sam, before we get to the obscene salaries some of these bosses are paid, a very alarming story emerged yesterday that they've closed over the past 4 years. The banks, all of the banks, have closed 1 million accounts, and so that's working out around about 300,000 a year. And apparently, the rate of cancellation of bank accounts for political reasons is accelerating. So the fate of Dame Alison Rose, forced to quit because of the Farage fiasco, doesn't seem to have discouraged the banking community from carrying on with this outrageous persecution of anyone who disagrees with them.
Yeah, 1 million, truly staggering numbers. There's about 45 million adults in the UK, so that means 1 in 45, or over 2% of people in the entire country have, either as an individual or through an organisation, had their bank accounts terminated. I mean, these are staggering numbers. And at the Free Speech Union, we know of it happening to churches. We know of it happening to local branches of political parties. We've known of it happening to a vicar, to politicians, to people in business. It's hitting people across the board. And the banks just thought, by embarrassing people, by just saying, much like they did with Nigel Farage, you won't want to go out and shout about the fact you've had your bank account terminated because you're worried about getting another one. They could keep this under wraps, and they can't do it anymore. It's got too big, and it is a scandal that I think will have totemic implications for the entire British banking sector for a very long time to come.
Indeed, and that brings into sharp focus the kind of money that the bosses of the banks are paid. As I say, Dame Alison Rose, sure, she's very good economically, but politically and in terms of her ludicrous wokery, banging on, droning on about the NatWest and Coates' values. Why would we give a damn what the values of a bank are? Just do your damn job. It's as simple as that. So in that respect, she was quite useless. She's brought about great shame and ignominy for both the banks that she ran, and she was getting £5.2 million a year. Former Unilever boss Alan Jope was £4.6 million a year. How do you fancy this? John Pettigrew, chief executive of the National Grid, £7.3 million last year. Now, I'm all for the bosses of big companies earning an appropriate salary. They should get big money. They're doing big jobs, but not this much. This is taking our money, customers' money, shareholders' money, and carving it up among themselves. And in terms of us and them and the polarisation, the financial polarisation of this country, the rich and the rest, it's getting ridiculous. These companies have got to stop doing this. There's no way anyone is worth 7.3 million quid a year.
Yeah, especially not when they're running companies, and you just listed off 3 that, as far as I'm concerned, have provided pretty pants service to their customers over many years, not least NatWest, not least the National Grid. But these are also business leaders that are lecturing us about how woke they are, how progressive they are, how lefty they are. They've all registered for this B Corp status that seems to be at the heart of much of it. Well, I think B Corp stands for be all right for us corporate types, because we're raking it in.
Yeah.
It's shameful, and we ought to take with an immense pinch of salt the lecturings of anybody who thinks their corporate package each year ought to be in the high 7 figures. It's for the birds.
It is ridiculous, and you know, it's close on corruption. You know, it is taking too much money for, you know, the favoured few at the expense of everyone else. And in fact, you know, we have a huge problem with the haves and the have-nots in this country. And in the cost of living crisis, the have-nots, the number of have-nots is absolutely spiralling. We've got millions struggling to pay their mortgage. And then we have people earning 7.3 million quid a year, 5.2 million quid a year being paid by these companies who don't seem to understand what a terrible message this sends.
No, and of course they think they can kind of cover it up, and I think this is a big part of it. They think they can cover it up. They think they can hide the fact that really they're on the take by lecturing us and saying, no, do you know who the real problem is? It's Mr. Biggins that lives out in Clacton who runs the local UKIP branch. We're going to show how virtuous we are by shutting down his savings accounts. We're going to show how virtuous we are by terminating our banking agreement with one or other political parties. It is woke washing of their own corporate greed. Don't buy it, don't accept it, don't even think that these people are going into it with good intentions. They're not. More times than not, they're trying to cover up for their own greed.
I've got an idea, Sam, just before we part company. Thank you for joining us so much. How about this? The government, so we're going to get tough on this, we're going to crack down. Yeah, we'll crack down then. Say to the banks, we find you guilty of closing one account due to political reasons, because you don't like the political worldview of your customer. You do that once, we close you down. That would stop them.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the rule for hotels. Hotels aren't permitted to turn people away because they don't like the colour of their skin or their views or all the rest of it. Why are banks a special category in this country? Why are banks not bound by the same rules as internet service providers or water companies or even ports and harbours? Why do they get special treatment still, 13 years after they crashed the economy?
I know. The government's got to get tough. It keeps talking tough about all sorts of things, but nothing ever seems to happen. With banks, we have a real disaster on our hands here. They are out of control, and despite everything that's happened to Alison Rose, she's lost her £5.2 million a year job. It doesn't seem to have resonated with the rest of the banking community, who continue to do Nigel Farage's on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of accounts. We just heard 1 million over the past 4 years. This is a disgrace. Sam, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Sam Armstrong, their Legislative Affairs Director at the Free Speech Union, and he's a social commentator as well.